Hi, everyone. My name is Elana Cohen, and I'm a senior editor at Disney Publishing Worldwide. And I'm so excited to be here today with our wonderful author of Hello, Cruel Heart, New York Times bestselling author, Maureen Johnson. Hi, Maureen.
Hi, I am Maureen Johnson. I am the aforementioned author, I don't know about the wonderful, of Hello, Cruel Heart.
Oh, you are wonderful. Come on.
Editors have to say these things.
Maureen's paying me to say it right now. Maureen, it's so great to be chatting with you. It's so great to be chatting with you about our little book baby, Hello, Cruel Heart.
She's so cute.
Oh, she's so cute. She's delicious. And she just made her way out into the world. So tell us a little bit about Hello, Cruel Heart, just to introduce readers, the premise, characters, setting, anything you feel like your readers need to know.
Well, Hello, Cruel Heart. Suddenly I was trying to say a lot of words at once because I was trying to say Cruella and Hello, Cruel Heart is the story of Estella. See, that's why all the names turned into one word.
It's a tongue twister for sure.
Cruella and Estella in Hello, Cruel Heart. Try and say it 5 times fast, everybody.
I won't.
So Estella, she will eventually become Cruella, lives in London with her friends Jasper and Horace. She's an orphan. They live together in a lair, which is this amazing half bombed out wreck of a building that they've turned into their home and their hideaway. And they survive by pickpocketing and petty thievery, and they're poor. But Estella is a fashion designer. She knows this in her heart. She knows she's brilliant. She's like, I'm brilliant. I'm just a brilliant person. And the world will know me. But she doesn't quite know how that is going to happen because she is a poor orphan who lives in a burned out lair. And she steals fabric and she makes clothes, but she wants to break into the fashion scene in London. And this is London in 1967. The world around her is very exciting and she wants to be a part of it. And one day, while she's out on one of her little runs, she meets a brother and a sister who are part of London society and are very wealthy. And they kind of take her up as a hobby. And that's where our story begins.
Oh, I love it. And so speaking of book babies, since we just mentioned our baby, making a book is really like, bringing something to life. And obviously, you know that having written so many, many books, far more than I have, I've not written any. But what initially drew you to this project? Because I remember sort of our first conversation where, I pitched you the idea and we kind of talked about it. And for those who don't know, this is a tie-in novel inspired by the upcoming Cruella Disney live action film that will be in theaters and on Disney Plus, May 28th. Mark your calendars. So what drew you to this project? What was exciting to you about this specific idea?
As I remember it, you told me about Cruella and what it was going to be about and when it took place. And I almost crawled through the computer screen in my efforts to tell you about my obsessive lifelong interest of swinging London, my embarrassing degree of walking around knowledge that had never been useful to me before, and my burning desire to use it in a story and make something set there. Something like that.
Totally. Yeah. And getting into that for a second, I don't think I've ever Googled more when working on a book than when I was reading your draft.
A little embarrassing.
I was like, I'm sure these are all right, but I don't know anything about it. So honestly, a lot of it was like an education for me too, which was so fun, just, as an editor to kind of get a taste of that time period and that setting. What is it you love so much about swinging London and those late 1960s? Is there something about the time period that stands out to you especially, or what draws you to that kind of period in time in history?
It's a little mysterious. It's been an obsession since I was about 13.
Mm-hmm.
I came in definitely through the music. Somebody gave me Sgt. Pepper and I listened to it once and I basically said, well, this is my life now. And I mean, truly, it was like that. And then I deep dove in and I've never looked back. And I mean, I think one of my highest compliments when I was in grad school for writing was that I wrote a critique of a piece that was written in 1970. And the professor said, this was written like someone who was there, but I know she could not have been there. And I was like, I've achieved it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we all have just things that transfix us and get stuck in our imagination. And for me, that it's so colorful. I mean, think about it this way. So the Second World War ends in 1945 and London is bombed out. They're on rationed food.
Mm-hmm.
It's gray, it's grim, it's a very rainy place,
Mm-hmm.
in dark, serious bowler hats and gray stone. And then all of a sudden, all of these young people that were born in this period that had, like, at points they hadn't had a lot of food, there hadn't been a lot of like extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And out of nowhere is this kind of explosion of color, of music, of creativity. And when I say it is colorful, it is really hard to overstate how wild and colorful and strange everything got very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is. I think I probably sent you some pictures and I said, it looks like this.
Just a few. Yep. And then I added to it myself. I was like, I don't know who Ossie Clark is. Let me Google that. And then I was like, wow. And Mary Quant and all of the designers that you touched on, it was just a real, because Estella is a fashion designer, or an aspiring fashion designer. And just getting to see all of that, both in the research that I did based on your research and come to life on the page, and your portrayal of Estella was just really, really cool for me as an editor, and super affirming in terms of the direction we were going, and that, we knew readers would come to it and love that.
Also, because I got to read the script for Cruella and see the designs and the walkthroughs and all of the, like, the fact that they recreate Liberty London. And I'm like, I will do anything for one of those recreated 1970s Liberty. Like, who do I need to talk to get one of those scarves? I spent a lot of time just kind of staring, going, how? But how? How? But I know that it's going into that the movie takes place in the 70s. So you're going to be looking at things like Vivienne Westwood, the burgeoning punk scene. It's so good.
It's so good. It's so good. And just to expand on that for a minute, in terms of your specific experience writing this particular novel. So given that this is, like we said, it's based on the film Cruella, you read the script, it's a little bit of a different model than maybe what you're used to writing generally, or what you've, recently written, in that it's Disney intellectual property, and you're being brought on as the author to really add so much life and color and sensibility to these characters and their story. How is that different for you in terms of the drafting, outlining, concepting process, if at all? Or did you find that it was, more or less kind of the same?
Well, it's the same and it's different. That's it. End of answer. No, it's
tell me more, please.
So I worked in theater for some time, and my specialty was adaptation. And my job at that point was, you go in and you study the characters and the parameters and the speech patterns, and you try to transfer the action and convert it into a different medium. And I had that background of, you're making something totally new from material that exists, and you have to figure out, because it's not just a straight one-on-one, how you shape it and mold it and set it and develop it. It's quite a process. This was actually much more open than that. I found it was like, I sometimes find that when you have some constraints, you are more creative, and maybe that is something to do with some unresolved trauma from going to Catholic girls' school or something. But I sometimes do my best when I'm in a little, it's like, here's the parameters of the sandbox. But I felt like you gave me ample room. Like, I never felt at any point, I was like, here's the story, and you're like, I like it.
Like, I love it.
It's really what it felt like. I knew it's a little bit like aiming an arrow. Like, I know I'm making a thing and I'm going to send the thing in that direction. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm making a structure that we're going to wind up and set going, and it's its own thing. And if you continue following it, you'll lead into Cruella.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make sense? I mean,
It
in
does.
terms of structuring the novel, you structure it and you plot it out largely in the same way,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception that I mean, it's not like in the end I was like, and then I kill her off, or something like that. She can, that she continues, and basically who she's with
Mm-hmm.
at the end of it. But
Yes.
aside from that, then you plot it like a normal novel.
Yeah, and I think we did such a wonderful job, or you did such a wonderful job of really ending it. No spoilers, but in a way that perfectly kind of sets up the next portion of Estella slash Cruella's life, for what readers and fans will see of her in the film. So it's just a really great kind of throughway into that space. And so we're talking a lot about Estella and Cruella, and she's both. Sometimes she's neither one. She's one. She's the other. So tell us a little bit about that, about this kind of duality to this main character.
Well, nobody's born with the name Cruella, so her name is Estella, and Cruella. What I thought was really interesting is that it's reflected in the script, is that Cruella is the internal voice and her character that comes out that her mother identifies. So whenever she's being kind of especially spiky, her mother says, that's Cruella.
My mom used to call me something also, but it wasn't Cruella.
And she says, you can tell Cruella that she can go now.
Mm-hmm.
And Cruella, I think at first, Cruella is really the voice that it can be snappy at other people, but often turns on herself and says things like, nobody really likes you. Why would you even bother trying? They don't actually care about you. Why do you think you could be a fashion designer? Look at you. Look at where you live. Do you think those people would associate with? That's Cruella.
Mm-hmm.
She's a voice of self-preservation who will attack Estella herself in order to protect her and will keep other people at bay. And it's sort of the battle, I think the whole thing, this book and the movie, you'll see the battle of Estella and Cruella and which one eventually, wins out.
And I guess we know which one eventually wins out.
I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but
I think we all have a little bit of Cruella in every one of us. And that's a super universal theme, I think, is that, we all have this voice, or most of us, maybe some are lucky enough not to, but most of us have this voice that's kind of whispering to us on the inside and saying, you can't do it, So I guess my question for you is, has there ever been a time in your life that you want to share where you've maybe had that voice and what you've been able to do to sort of, have you overcome it? Do you incorporate that into yourself? Because I think a certain measure of kind of self-preservation, like you said, is helpful, but when does it kind of go from helpful to harmful? And what would your advice be to folks who do struggle with that kind of inner voice?
I certainly have it to a lesser degree than Estella.
Yes, I think most of us do.
What I would say is that I relate to her strongly, that when I was a kid, I wanted to write and I wanted to make books, and I had zero idea how people got to write books. I knew about writing because I wrote all the time. I was like, I write, but how do I turn this thing that I'm doing in my bedroom with my pen and my whatever, and make that into a thing that's like, here is the thing, here is a book. And it was just a lifetime of question marks between here and there. And by the same measure, Estella is in her lair. She's poor. She's stealing cloth and buttons and just working with, limited light and a stolen sewing machine, trying to make clothes and saying, how do I get this to them? Those people that don't even look at me, who should look at me because I'm amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a lot more to kind of work against, because I think fashion in particular it's kind of the playground of the rich, and it's by its nature pretty exclusive, and it's very physical, it's very beautiful and shiny, and if you don't have access to the right people and places and venues, how do you let the world see your work?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly in a pre-social media of any kind, you're just literally, it's 1967 and you're living in half a building with no roof.
Mm-hmm.
So
challenging.
How do you make yourself into the thing that you know that you are?
Mm-hmm. Well, part of the way that Estella does it, or I guess the people who support her, are her friends, Jasper and Horace, who you mentioned, and readers might be familiar with those characters, but they're definitely not familiar with this version of those characters, because here they're portrayed very much as not only Estella's best friends, but even more so they're her family, honestly. Yeah. So how important do you feel like it is to have kind of a strong support system, be it friends, be it family, be it a mixture of the two, in kind of helping you achieve your dreams or the goals that you have set for yourself?
Well, it's fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's interesting as things peel on is that I think that they start, actually when they start, Jasper and Horace are kind of showing Estella around. And then you'll see as time progresses that it's, then they're equals, that she's a little bit in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously as time goes on, you'll see that she is fully in charge. So how that friend dynamic changes. But in this story, it's a very friend family dynamic, and about what you do when you make new friends with connections, and do you abandon your old friends when you're going to a new school now? Are you going to leave your old friends behind? That kind of thing.
Yeah. And another main theme of the book, so apart from friendship, is love, or first loves. Estella meets this, rock star kind of guy, and he just totally draws her in. And it was so fun for me to read kind of this first romance, and it was just written so gorgeously. And again, no spoilers, but you have to read the book to figure out how it ends, if it ends. Have you ever had, what's your kind of first love? Have you had that kind of teen heartbreak that inspired the portrayal?
Yes, of course. It doesn't have, my experience is not like what happens in the book, but I think we all go through it, because there are people that meet someone at 16 and that's it. Like, you're with that person forever. But I think, that experience is less common than meeting people and dating them and breaking up, because you're out in the world and you're meeting people. You don't have to be like, I pair bond forever. Like, that's, usually not how it works out. And in the case of Estella and Peter, who is a musician, we may meet him. He's on his way up. The band hasn't quite broken yet. He's very talented. He's maybe a little underconfident. Everybody likes the main singer. And we are seeing Estella and Peter as they're on their way up. And you see whether or not, their paths converge and diverge, and what it means when your maybe success or life goes in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And also just maybe socially, or part of the period, it was a very free time. And that's also reflected in the story. I'm talking around it a lot, because obviously you don't want to give away what happens.
No. Read to find out. So you mentioned music as part of Peter, who's the kind of love interest in the book, and music is obviously a big theme in the book as well. So what were your sort of musical inspirations while you were writing? Did you have one song that was on repeat? Was it a few different artists? Do you write with music? Do you write with white noise or no noise? What were you listening to while you wrote this one?
Oh, hi. Would you like to be bored?
No.
The thing is, my answer with this would be super long. In general, I don't write with music.
Mm.
If I do, it's a set playlist that never changes, so that it becomes essentially a kind of background drone, that because I just will end up listening to the music and not, I have to kind of, I guess I have a brain that only does one thing at a time. It's either writing or it's listening to music, but it is very rarely doing both. There were a ton of artists that I thought about a lot and really, really molded some of the characteristics on. And some people have said I should make a Spotify playlist for it. And I could, if people would like to. But there were particularly two I mention a number of musicians in the book, and Easter eggs, question mark, are that a lot of the stuff I put in the book is accurate in terms of where people lived and things like that. For example, I talk about Mick Jagger and Marianne Faithfull living at a certain place on Cheyne Walk, which they did. So I put Richard and Magda's house on a real historical block where some members of the Rolling Stones lived, and David Bowie lived around the corner. Like all those addresses I put in there are accurate. The summer that this story takes place is the summer of 1967. And at that, I believe it was May or very early June. I can't remember the exact date, but that's when Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles came out, which features in the book. Estella sees an advertisement on a bus going by, and that looked and sounded like nothing anybody had ever seen before. And that very much kind of starts the summer. It was quite a summer. I mean, like, there's a lot that happened in that summer historically. So it was a good summer to be able to, again, write about obsessively. And if you're me, with wide eyes going, yes, and I'll add this, and I'll put it in this.
It's your dream. So speaking of music, we were able to do something pretty cool with the audiobook edition of this novel. And you might be considering a new or additional career course. So do you want to tell readers a little bit about that?
So there are songs in the book, which I just wrote in because it's part of the story. And then you told me, oh, guess what? Somebody has scored these and made them into songs. So there is music in the audiobook. Like someone plays the songs. It still makes me laugh because I'm like, really? Yeah, but yes, there's actual music in the book. You can hear the songs. The band is called the Electric Teacup, and you can hear their music.
I think my favorite one was Magic Bean Girl. That was probably my fave.
Yes, Estella makes a dress. She gets the nickname Magic Bean. She makes a lot of dresses in this out of just stuff. And that it was getting to the point where I was like, what? I was looking around for things she could make dresses out of. And so while I have an interest in fashion in this period, in general, I dress like a 5-year-old auditioning to be a 4-year-old. I am not like someone you turn to for this sort of advice, but the weird tactile nature of clothes in this period were suddenly made of seemingly anything, which included plastic, like raincoat material, metal discs, paper. They sold like fold up paper dresses, mini dresses. Those existed. Like you could just open a pack and put on a little paper mini dress. So those are all real. So when she has a paper dress in this, that's based in that you could really buy paper dresses. Just a lot of military gear, a lot of antiques and military gear were incorporated into clothing. So you'll see like a lot of kind of Edwardian, regalia. They would go to the Chelsea Antiques Market and buy lace and old materials and convert those. So I had to think of how it's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to figure out how to build some of these dresses. So I tried to figure out how you could make dresses, which is not something I've ever thought about before.
Neither have I. Yeah, neither have I. But I do have certain items of clothing that, hold a very special memory or kind of association. Like they're kind of their own living, breathing entity. Do you have anything like that? Any sort of piece of clothing?
Oh, yeah.
Memento? Yeah.
That you will never, ever, I will never get rid of them.
Exactly.
They are sheer. They are if you breathe too hard, they will dissipate, but they should not be worn. But and some of those I've boxed up finally, like just put it in a box. Like you can have it, just don't wear it.
Yeah.
But some of them I'm like, no, you are my friend. I will wear you.
I know. I had my wedding gown kind of boxed up. I guess there's a special sort of preservation that you can do with, I don't know if it's wedding gowns in particular or if people just do it for wedding gowns, but it was my wedding dress and my mom had it kind of boxed up in a really beautiful way and preserved for, I don't know what, I guess my daughter, if she'd ever want to wear it, but it would be horribly out of fashion. It's already out of style, but
yeah, they dip them in carbonite or something, and it's just
oh, really?
No, I mean that's like Han Solo, like it's just like a solid mass that you're like, here you go. My wedding dress was just like a dress from a designer, so I just had it cleaned and then I just kind of put it back in its box that it came in. I was like, well, I guess I'll put you in this box here and elaborate shrug.
Yeah.
maybe you'll grow into a tree. I don't know. So
that would be magical. So let's play a little word association for one moment, because another aspect of the book that was really fun for me to work on as an editor were all of the Briticisms that you wove in and out, obviously staying true to the characters. And the setting and the time. And again, thank you, Google, because some of them I did not know. So I'm going to give you a word, and I think it's a Briticism. And you tell me what the US equivalent would be as quickly as you can.
Is this from the book or is this other things?
These are mostly from the book, but possibly also a few other things.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Game. I'm always ready for a game. I'm 100% ready 24 hours a day.
Okay. Same. Okay. So quid.
It's a pound. It's 1 unit of currency, and it's a little more. I've learned the specific rules of. Apparently, there are times that you say quid, and times that you say a pound. But it just means a pound.
I've also found that very confusing, by the way. When do they call a quid, and when is a quid a pound?
There's it's like when we would say bucks. It's like sometimes you wouldn't say bucks and sometimes you do say bucks, and it's really, you kind of have, it's like a nebulous definition of like, well, it's like you say it's a few bucks.
Yes. Okay. Bloke.
What was that one?
Bloke.
A person, a guy, like a guy.
Chips.
Fries.
Dodgy.
Questionable.
Chuffed.
Pleased. I think it's a more personal. It's like when you say you're chuffed, it's that it kind of warms you all over.
I like that. And then finally, and this might tie back into quid, I think, but dosh.
Money.
And I think that was directly from the book for sure. As was chips, because Estella likes them.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
This is I'm married to an English person, so
you are.
I am. I'm married to an English, so I have a knowledge of some of the more esoteric ones, like there's one that's like having a shufti.
What is that?
It's something to do with, or is it having a butcher's? There's one called having a butcher's.
What is that?
It means looking.
Really?
Because it's something to do with butcher's hook, having a look. It's like one of those rhyming slang. So when people are like, a shufti, I think is a look through, and I have to go in and be like, is shufti a look through? But having a butcher's means you have a look. There's all kinds of ones that I was like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's cool that you had an actual live Englishman if he helped you at all when you were writing the book.
I have a captive English that I go in sometimes and go, tell me exactly. So I'll check out whenever I write an English character, I always have them check for tone and like just correct weighted usage in the dialogue. Because it's like you can always tell that no matter how good they are because whenever you get a British actor who's doing an American accent, and it's just every couple words, it's like someone zinged you on the ear and you're like, no, it's not quite right. Just stop it. So they can, by the same token, you want to make sure you get the right weight and the right usage. So,
well, yeah. And I remember when we were talking about the individual characters, there was some discussion about, well, where are they from? Because in England, everyone kind of has you have a different dialect based on, or an accent or influence based on where you're located. So we needed to know some of that to actually write them authentically.
And she's from the north, if I'm not mistaken. So she comes down from the north. So she'd have a northern accent. And there are many Northern English accents and speech patterns. But at that point, you can't get too weeded down with that stuff because, at some point people are like, okay. It's not going to come across at a certain level. But also I got very interested in where precisely the lair was, because I have to know on a map where everything's taking place, or I can't think. I do it with every book. Yeah. I have to have a map. I have to know where in space it's happening, or I can't really function. I often have maps drawn for my books.
And there's that one scene where Estella and Peter go into the lair and then back out of the lair, and we see it. And I remember one of your comments that we were talking to our studio liaisons about was, how do they get in? How do they get out? We need to know. We need to know the details.
Yeah, I knew I had to get them in, and I knew that the method, because I'd seen in the script roughly, imagine the game Mousetrap. That's what it sounds like. It's just like they go in, they go out, they go up. So I was trying to trace it out. I'm like, all right, this is they go down and then they go up and then they go down and I could not work it out. It's like, but how do you go through a hole in the ground and then you go up and you're on a roof and then you jump through a hole? So then I had to send all these questions to the studio going, what? Can you explain to me? Do you have any pictures of this? Because I cannot understand. And for me, this is a tick of me. Like, until I can figure out, like, please explain to me exactly. Because I knew there were 2 holes and there were 2 downs and there were an up. And then they explained it. They're like, oh, they go down through, they bust it out. Because after the war, a lot of buildings were literally blown in half.
Right.
So you get to see in the film that what they live in is sort of half. One part of this building has been totally blown away. So you see the outline of the building that was there, and they live in the sort of remaining half of this building. And it looks super cool, but it also means that they sort of enter through a hole in the ground and I guess go in through what would have been the basement, then crawl up like through the remaining staircase on the other side and then jump through this is what I was doing all the time. I was like, where it is confusing, but it's amazing. But I think it's a visual that in the movie will make a lot of sense. But
I totally deferred to you when we were writing the book and editing and everything. And I was like, this sounds good. Studio, this good to you? And they were like, yeah, looks good.
Yeah. I was like, well, where in the city was it? Because I was like, how long would it take to get from Regent's Park to here? And which direction would they run in? Would they run north? And this is the kind of stuff that I can get hung up on. We all have our thing. And for me, that's part of how my brain works. So I just
but it's at the same time, it's something that makes for a really authentic read, and it helps readers really visualize the space and, put themselves there. So important.
Or people could read it and be like, that is not how you get to Regent's Park, because there's a bunch of action that takes place at Regent's Park. So,
that's true.
I have to be like, well, how could they get to, did they have to run for 4 hours? Like, how did they, or was it a 20-minute run?
Right. So you were kind of mapping it all out for yourself.
And that's an interesting part of when you're working with the studio, is then you can go because all of these things have been built.
Right.
So their lair and that building it exists, which is not something that usually happens. You're not usually writing something and be like, I'll go look at the actual thing. Because it exists, I had to make sure it matched the thing that already is in existence.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we have time for one more question, and this is a little bit of a departure from what we've been talking about, but I'm going to ask you the classic dinner party question. So you can invite 5 people to a dinner party, but they all have to be Disney
characters.
Yes. Okay. Who would you invite and why?
Oh, I'm not ready for this question.
Oof, I told you there were going to be some curveballs. Fine, you can name 3. If you can't get to 5, you could do 3. It's anyway, we're in COVID, so it would be more of an intimate dinner party. Everyone would be mad.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to start to the side and say the Mandalorian because I just want him to sit there.
Okay. That's fair.
With his mask on.
Sure.
And never remove it. And so he's just kind of sitting at the end of the table.
I love it.
Just kind of like, then I think it's like I'm blank. I've seen all the Disney movies and yet I'm blanking on everyone that has ever existed. Can you just start rattling some off and so I can just grab one?
Well, let's see if we wanted to do one of the princesses, maybe.
I'm not a princess person. I have no feelings about.
You might still want to break bread with a princess, even if you're not a princess person. Or how about, okay, so if not a princess, so how about a villain? We've got Cruella, we've got Hades, we've got Yzma, we've got Jafar. Let's see who else. We've got Chernabog. We've got Edgar Balthazar.
Ursula.
Okay. I didn't name that one, but I like that you did. Okay, why Ursula?
I just think that she would be funny sitting next to the Mandalorian. And the crab. I want that crab there just because I want the crab there.
You want the crab from The Little Mermaid?
Yeah, I want the crab.
Okay, he's not a villain, obviously, but
no, but I just want him there, just kind of, but he's below the table and he's just kind of snapping like that. And then I think I need one more.
Okay.
And I'm kind of walking around Disney World in my head a little bit, trying to pluck someone that feels right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like Future World.
Okay.
I'm not that into Fantasy World, but I'm very, very into Adventureland. Strong, warm feelings. And I know it's to the left.
Okay.
So I'm like going this way.
You are in Disney World right now.
I'm in Disney World. Okay. We're obviously eating Dole Whip. All of us.
You'd have to be. Or a churro.
Oh, you know who I have? And I don't know if this counts, but it's the 3 hitchhiking ghosts.
Totally counts.
So I want them there. And then I want, no, I think that's it. That's my weird party.
That's a nice full table.
Yeah, I have the Mandalorian. I have Ursula. I have the crab that's slightly under the table. And I have three ghosts.
Works for me.
That's my table.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, you go enjoy that dinner party.
Thank you.
It was so fun to talk to you. And
Thank you. This has been great.
Hello, Cruel Heart. It's been so fun. And anyone who's listening, you can pick up a copy of Hello, Cruel Heart wherever books, ebooks, audiobooks are sold. It's amazing in any medium. And have a great day.
And also remember, if you get the audiobook, you get bonus music.
You got Maureen Johnson, lead vocalist.
It is not me. It is not me singing.
lead lyricist.
Yeah, it is definitely not me singing.
I wish it was. All right. Have a great day, guys.
Bye.